Hi folks, Seth Leapson here. Thanks for watching my monologue. In these uncertain times, you may be thinking about personal protection. If you are, I urge you to visit my friends at Guns Etc. They'll help you find the perfect protection for yourself and your family, and they can even teach you how to use it. They've been protecting Arizonans for over 33 years, and they stand for the great principles this country was founded upon. Or you can just click on gunsetc.com. And if you like my monologues, please subscribe to 960 The Patriots YouTube channel. Welcome back. Happy January 5th, 2021. As we go through what it means to be a conservative and what conservatism is, it strikes me we may want a brief intercalary pause on what it means to be a Republican, too. This dawned on me as I was reading Phil Boas's editorial in the Arizona Republic this morning, the thesis of which is that there is a Republican civil war going on, and it was started by Donald Trump. Quote, he's starting a civil war in his own party, Boas writes. He also writes, his 4 years of erratic governance cost him re-election, and his destructive final days will likely cost Republicans many elections to come. He then ponders, quote, what does conservatism mean in our modern world? What are its core principles? Close quote. Question mark. Well, on the latter, he might tune into a show dedicated to answering that question in his own hometown, or he might just read the most famous Arizona Republican's book on the matter. A book that lit up the nation, Barry Goldwater's Conscience of a Conservative, the title helping give an idea of what the book is about, I should think. We've distilled it here many times, but what Boas writes, and I quote above, is quite telling. His 4 years, Trump's 4 years of erratic governance cost him re-election, Boas says. Interesting notion that. Maybe. Or maybe it was that there was a left-wing onslaught against Donald Trump from before day one that was unremitting and never let up, joined in by the media. Polls tell us that was the case. To remind, despite the Me Too movement and the media coverage around it, media research company survey found that 35.5% of Biden voters in November were unaware of the serious allegations of sexual assault by Tara Reade against Joe Biden. I wonder if the Arizona Republic ever wrote about Tara Reade. If they had known about Tara Reade's sexual assault allegations, nearly 9% said they would have changed their vote. This would have flipped all 6 of the swing states now in the Biden column. Another important story buried by the major media was the Hunter Biden laptop story, which showed that Joe Biden was aware of his son's business dealings in the Ukraine and in communist China. 45% of Biden voters said they were unaware of that story, and the poll found awareness of the Hunter Biden scandal would have led to 9.5% of Biden voters to abandon the Democratic candidate, flipping all 6 of those states as well. Similar results were found when Biden voters were asked about the other 6 censored stories: Kamala Harris's radical left-wing policies, positive economic and job reports, Middle East peace deals brokered by Donald Trump, energy independence, and the swift vaccine production as a result of Trump's Operation Warp Speed. Looking at all 8 of these issues together, the poll found that a total of 17% of Biden's voters said they would have changed their vote if they had been aware of one or more of these important stories. This would have moved every one of the swing states into Trump's column. Some by a huge margin, was the conclusion. It's always interesting to me the media's role in affecting an election is downplayed by the media itself. But as for a civil war in the party, one wonders what someone like Boas would have said in 1976 when Ronald Reagan challenged a sitting Republican president. And what it was that cost that sitting president the re-election. It certainly wasn't erratic behavior, was it? Or what might have been said when Barry Goldwater challenged the party in 1964, running such a campaign of conviction that establishment Republicans like George Romney walked out of the convention. Of course, today Barry Goldwater is a hero to almost everyone now that he's not in power, of course, or even alive. They like conveying medals on Republicans who are no longer in power or alive as hammers to batter current Republicans over the head with, always writing silly nonsense like so-and-so would never recognize X, fill in the blank, as a member of his party today, or so-and-so would never recognize today's Republican Party. The funny thing is, when you go back and read the press about those so-and-sos, like Goldwater, like Reagan, the press was saying the same things about them when they were in power and alive as they say about Republican leaders like Donald Trump today. So what is the Republican Party, and who started what civil war within it? Let us begin by reminding that from its very beginning, its very first platform in 1856, it was pretty strong medicine, adopting and incorporating what we said yesterday was and must be the essence of American conservatism, the principles of the Declaration of Independence. The first resolution in that first Republican platform in 1856 said this, quote, that the maintenance of the principles promulgated in the Declaration of Independence and embodied in the federal Constitution are essential to the preservation of our Republican institutions, and that the federal constitutions, the rights of states, and the union of the states must and shall be preserved. The second resolution reaffirmed the first. It said this, quote, that with our Republican fathers we hold it to be a self-evident truth that all men are endowed with the inalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that the primary object and ulterior design of our federal government is to secure these rights to all persons under its exclusive jurisdiction, close quote. The platform even went on to call slavery and polygamy, and it related the two, quote, twin relics of barbarism, close quote. That's pretty strong medicine, and by the way, the beginning of a party dedicated to promoting and preserving family values. So much for those who contemn the party when it does so today. When it does so today, after all, it is in consonance with the very founding platform that Abraham Lincoln would run on. As for the party today, yes, Goldwater challenged the House in the 1960s, and in that Civil War, throwing out the Rockefellers and Romneys from the temple, one might say. He solidified a new right. But it was really a new old right, one, say, Calvin Coolidge would have recognized. A new old Republican Party Lincoln, McKinley, and Coolidge would have understood. A new old Republican Party and right wing that Ronald Reagan hewed to and Donald Trump ran on and spoke of. Let us try it this way. Barry Goldwater was not shy about reminding us that our movement should be about more than something than just better management of the levers of the state. In his book, he wrote this, quote, the root difference between the conservatives and the liberals of today is that conservatives take account of the whole man, while the liberals tend to look only at the material side of man's nature. The conservative believes that man is in part an animal creature, but that he is also a spiritual creature with spiritual needs and spiritual desires. What is more, these needs and desires reflect the superior side of man's nature and thus take precedence over his economic wants. Conservatism, therefore, looks upon the enhancement of man's spiritual nature as the primary concern of political philosophy. Man's most sacred possession is his individual soul, close quote, Barry Goldwater wrote. The reason conservatives and Republicans disdained big government was not because they were anti-government, but because they were pro-freedom and pro-human soul, knowing the larger the government, the smaller the human. And we were a country founded on the rights of man, not the rights of government, and not the rights of men to govern other men without their consent. That's what freedom and equality mean. Donald Trump spoke to this perhaps most loudly to an audience most prepared to hear about it in the summer of 2017 in Poland. He spoke of the godless communist oppressors of Poland and how, with the visit of John Paul II, Poles were given what we might call a new birth of freedom. Trump said this to several interruptions of applause, quote, 1 million Polish people did not ask for wealth. They did not ask for privilege. Instead, 1 million Poles sang 3 simple words. We want God. In those words, the Polish people recalled the promise of a better future. They found new courage to face down their oppressors, and they found the words to declare that Poland would be Poland once again. As I stand here today, Trump continued, before this incredible crowd, this faithful nation, we can still hear those voices that echo through history. Their message is as true today as ever. The people of Poland, the people of America, and the people of Europe still cry out, "We want God." Together with Pope John Paul II, the Poles reasserted their identity as a nation devoted to God. And with that powerful declaration of who you are, you came to understand what to do and how to live. You stood in solidarity against oppression, against a lawless secret police, against a cruel and wicked system that impoverished your cities and souls, and you won. Close quote. Impoverished cities and souls. That's what conservatism fights. That's what the Republican Party should continue to fight. And if you want the marching orders, go back to Donald Trump's speech at Mount Rushmore last July. He provides the roadmap based on the principles of those men etched into the Black Hills of South Dakota and those who followed them. And if you want to see the line of continuing philosophy from the founding of National Review to the candidacies of Goldwater and Reagan and Trump, simply read the first issue of National Review, or for that matter, the Sharon's Statement of 1960. The principles articulated there, written by William Buckley, quote, individual freedom and the right of governing originate with God. Political freedom is impossible without economic freedom. Limited government and strict interpretation of the Constitution. The free market system being preferable over all others, and communism needing to be defeated, not contained. Those principles are all the same, with perhaps one correction. When I used to write or speak about the Sharon Statement or the National Review credenda, I said we just need to replace the word communism with Islamism, and we'd have the same effects today. But I don't think I can do that anymore, as never before has it been so popular and a threat, communism. Perhaps not to Europe anymore, but right here within America. Fighting for all that, what Goldwater spoke of, what the original GOP platform spoke of. If that's a civil war we started, already then. But it's a civil war worth fighting. After all, George H.W. Bush, like Jerry Ford, they didn't win second terms either. It's just that their losses weren't based on hewing to principle. And I'd rather lose fighting for principle than lose because I couldn't find one.